Alright, I'm going to reassemble the bolt for my M1 Carbine. There's the bolt and little parts. There's the extractor spring, bolt, extractor, ejector spring. This goes on the tip of, a piece goes on the tip of the extractor spring. There's the tip of the ejector, and a new, looks like it's new, I'm out of camera here, looks like a new, new as and never been used firing pin. It is RI stamped on it. I wonder if I can get that in focus. There you go, RI stamped on it. Rock Island, is that inland? I can't remember. There's so many names for all these things, GI parts. Here's the old one. It had WS or SM. Not sure which it is. I've not been able to find those marks. This one, the reason I decided to get a new one, the new one only cost me $25. So you can see it really is, the end of it's really had the crap hammered really hard and it's been flattened out. So I thought it would be better to replace it since I was having light strike problems. The extractor spring was, the old one was a mess. It was like 2/3 that length. It was totally worn out. The ejector spring didn't look too bad, but it was a $2 spring, so I thought I'd replace that anyway. The extractor itself, which is, you see the U for Underwood. The bolt is also in Underwood. That little lip in there, that goes from the edge of the casing, that was rounded over like at a 45-degree angle with carbon from just never been cleaning. This thing really was a mess when I got it. I was amazing it was extracting it all with such a weak spring and all that carbon. Anyway, I found out online in a forum, didn't read this in an actual document myself, and on a forum somebody unequivocally stated that spec for a M1 Carbine firing pin was supposed to be 2.957, which this isn't a particularly expensive or awesome micrometer, so depending on how I might jiggle or whatever, I'm getting 2.956, you know, to 2.957, so that's within 1/1000th of an inch. And now it's saying 5.5, just depends. But anyway, yeah, so anyway, so that appears to be spec, and I measured the old one, and by the numbers it appears to be still inside spec. Let's see if I can crank this down against it. So it's reading, yeah, depending, I'm getting 5.5, 5.4, so it's definitely worn some, but it should be within spec as long as it's at least 2.953, but man, it's just really has had the crap hammered out of it, so I figured why not replace it. Just one more thing. I keep all the old parts anyway. New full operating spring also. The other one was maybe about half an inch shorter from wear, so these are relatively inexpensive parts anyway. So decided to replace that. So as not to spend half an hour cursing with all sorts of crazy wire ties and all sorts of needing extra hands, I decided to go ahead and spring for a tool, a bolt tool to put the bolt back together. It was easy to take it apart without this tool because the spring was so worn out it didn't go flying anywhere. It just fell apart in my hands. That was how worn it was. But to put it back together, there's multiple things that need to be in place. and need to be held simultaneously. So it's a real cursing nightmare I've heard. So this was worth the $37 I paid for it, just to save me all the cursing, especially if I have to do it again in the future. So we start with the bolt. Big hands in the way of the camera. And we drop the ejector spring in. And then this little tiny piece, which has a trying to get it to actually has a notch in it. Suppose the notch faces away. Need to sit it right on top. With the notch facing away from me. Drop in. Drop in the ejector spring. Drop in the injector with the cutout. There's a cutout there. Cutout facing down. There we go, perpendicular. Cutout facing down and perpendicular. Alright, so nothing falls apart. And let's see if I can get this right. I use the fork side of this thing that spins around with a cam. There's a fork in it. And slip this in here. Pin goes down like that. And then so the notched piece goes there. Yep, the cam slips. Notch goes onto the little piece there. Yep, don't pop out. There it goes. So that compresses it down all the way till it's tight. Up against the cam right there, and you can see I have a clean hole all the way through with which to put in now the firing pin and the extractor. So firing pin goes in, there's a notch in the bottom, firing pin goes in, see there's a notch in the firing pin that matches when it's all the way forward, and hold that, and then insert the extractor. So maybe I need to track this down a little more. And it looks like the little arm is in the way. Seems like that needs to, yep, It needs to rotate more. There we go. There we go. That's down flatter. Keep the firing pin in. Yep. I should have lifted over top of it. Quite needs a little more. And I think it doesn't want to go in, so I'm told if I back this off a little, usually can get the extractor to go in. Come on, baby. Something to push on a piece of wood. Piece of wood. Yeah, it's just stiff. Stiff. Boom. So let's say that pretty much qualifies for being all the way in. Let's make sure. Yep, it's all the way in. And you back out that. And boom. Nicely done. Free floating firing pin. See there? And the extractor. Some good tension on it. I mean, that's the ejector, and that little booger on the spring there is pushing on the extractor. Oh yeah. Before this extractor, this thing which grabs on the lip, it was just sort of off to the side. It wasn't even grabbing onto the bullet at all. No wonder it was. I was getting light strikes, and it wasn't. I was getting some stovepipes. So. Sweet. Got it. Put it together. First time. Unrehearsed. Never used this thing before. Just came in the mail. Cool.